I just got back from the hardware store and spent a total of $165.13. Got myself a whole bunch of black iron pipes and connectors. So I'm going to build a tabletop overhead shooting rig. I've done my first recipe video shoot, and you've seen that, and now I'm going to go over the whole setup and show you the different pieces, and also talk about what I'm going to change now that I've done a test shoot. So here's the wide shot so you can see the entire rig and how it's laid out. And as you can see, I've used this 1-inch black steel pipe that I got from the local hardware store to build the framework. You might think that sounds too small or too thin, but actually the 1 inch is the inside diameter, and by the time you get out on the thickness of this pipe, it's like probably 1.5 inches in diameter. So I was originally thinking I would need to go with a larger pipe, but the 1 inch worked out really well. Here's my overhead cam, the Panasonic GH4. I've had this for a few years. It's a great camera. Got the Lumix 12-35 on here. Gives me some good options for my overhead angle. And I'm using a Manfrotto 701 HDV head, which is connected right in to a Mafer super clamp, and it's a really solid connection there. I'm mixing it up. I've got some Manfrotto super clamps in here as well, and I've got my KinoFlow Diva lights here, which are mounted to the framework with Matthews Super Mafer clamps. I put in a long power strip on this side to give me lots of power options. It's just zip tied. I've got my Edelkrone slider here with action and target modules, and I can fire that up. As you can see, the camera follows the target, which in this case is the bowl, as it slides. I've got a Metabone Speed Booster Ultra on this little Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. And then I've got a really nice Zeiss Milvus lens on here. Makes for some really nice imagery. The problem that I ran into when I went to edit my first recipe video was that we just definitely had some different color between the GH4 and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Not surprising, really. Two completely different cameras. But it just made me realize that if I'm going to be producing a lot of these videos, it's going to be a lot easier just to have two matching cameras and to not have to deal with trying to match two different cameras in post. So my idea is to actually try using two Blackmagic Micro Studio cameras, one here on the slider and one overhead. So that's my next thing to try. I think that's going to make things easier. The Atomos Ninja Flame, really nice to have. I've got the 4x3 overlay on here because as you probably noticed, the final format for these videos is actually 1x1. There is no 1x1 overlay, but 4:3 is the closest I could get, so it is helpful to have that there. Now if I want to switch this and see my overhead view, I've got this cheap little switch that I bought, and I can click that. So there's the overhead view. Now as you can see, I'm putting my hand in here, but because of the position of the camera, it appears to be, from the other side. So we can actually go in here and do a flip, which will give us kind of an accurate representation of what's happening, if we want to see it that way. Sometimes it's easier to look down and see what you're doing, and look up and see everything in the same position. So, but that requires you to flip it in post after it's recorded, if you're recording directly to the Atomos, which is what I've been doing. So the Atomos takes these little SSDs made by Geeetech, and so that just slides right in the back, does all the recording, ProRes LT, and then I just slide this into this little sled, plug it into my MacBook Pro, and I can edit away. I'm not super happy with this switch. I mean, it was $10 on Amazon. There's just not a lot of options for a simple HDMI switch, little AB switch. I mean, it's got a metal box, it's kind of nice, but the switch itself is just cheap. It feels cheap. It doesn't always engage when you press it. Sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 tries to get the switch to engage. So I'm not sure I'm going to hang on to this method. Even with ProRes LT, the file sizes are pretty large. And if I'm going to be producing a lot of these videos and sending them to other editors and having to upload all the footage, then it's going to be a lot of bandwidth for me and for them. Because this first video I did actually ended up being about 15 gigabytes. It was a pretty simple recipe, pretty simple video, but yeah, it was about 15 gigs. If I were to have somebody else editing that remotely, that's a lot of data to upload. So thinking about other recording options as well.